My name is Marian Holloway. I am 72 years old. I live in a place with clean floors and scheduled meals where everyone smiles, but no one remembers my birthday. My son calls it care. I call it distance with a pretty name. There was a time when my mornings smelled like jasmine and coffee. I would sit on the porch of our home in Charleston, watching the light spread across the magnolia trees, feeling the weight of peace in my chest. The house had been in our family for generations. High ceilings, white columns, a garden my mother planted with her own hands. I raised my son there. I taught him to walk on those wooden floors. I held him through fevers and nightmares. I covered him with every blanket I could find, paid every bill before it arrived, swallowed every worry so he would never taste fear. When the bank sent the letter, I did not tell him. He was 28, building his life. I would not let him carry my burden. So I took my jewelry box from the closet, the one my grandmother gave me, lined with blue velvet and memories. Inside were the pieces my husband had given me over 30 years of marriage. A pearl necklace from our wedding anniversary, gold earrings he bought when Daniel was born, the sapphire ring he placed on my finger the night he proposed under the oak tree in our backyard. I sold them all, quietly, one by one, at a pawn shop on the edge of town where no one knew my name. The man behind the counter did not ask questions. He weighed the gold, counted the pearls, offered me less than they were worth. I took the money without negotiating. I paid the bank. I saved the house. I never told Daniel. I wanted him to believe the world was safe, that homes do not disappear, that mothers do not break themselves to hold things together. Years passed. I grew older. My knees ached. My hands trembled when I poured tea. Daniel visited less. He called more, always in a hurry, always between meetings. One day he arrived with brochures, bright pictures of facilities with gardens and activities. He said it was time, that I needed help, that he had found a good place. He smiled when he said it, proud, as if he had solved a problem. I did not argue. I packed my things. I left the house with the high ceilings and the magnolia trees. I moved into a room with beige walls and a window that does not open all the way. Daniel visits once a month. He brings flowers. He tells his friends he did the right thing. He says he gave his mother a comfortable life. He believes it. But here is what he does not know. I kept one piece, a small ring, gold band, no stone, nothing valuable to anyone but me. It was the first thing my husband ever gave me, a promise before the proposal. I hid it inside my prayer book, pressed between the pages of Psalms. I brought it with me to this place. Sometimes, late at night, I hold it in my palm and remember the weight of sacrifice, the quiet cost of love. My son speaks of care. He arranges my medications. He pays my bills. He checks boxes. But he does not sit with me in silence. He does not ask what I gave up. He does not know that the house he grew up in, the one he remembers with such fondness, was nearly lost, that I stood at the edge of losing everything and chose to let go of beauty so he could keep stability. Perhaps I taught him wrong. Perhaps I should have let him see the struggle. Let him carry some of the weight. Let him understand that love is not only warmth and comfort, that sometimes love is selling what you treasure so someone else can sleep without nightmares. But I did not. I kept the storm outside. I smiled through the auction of my memories. And now, when he speaks with pride about placing me in this clean, quiet place, I wonder if he confuses appearance with presence, if he mistakes a well-run facility for a mother's need, if he believes that because I am fed and safe, I am also loved. I do not blame him, not entirely. I built a world where problems disappeared before he could see them, where sacrifice was invisible, where strength looked like ease. How could he know the price I paid when I hid the receipts? Still, there are nights when I hold that small gold ring and feel the weight of all I carried alone. I think about the day I stood in that pawn shop, handing over pieces of my heart so my son could keep his innocence. I think about the banker who shook my hand, relieved. I think about walking home with empty pockets and a full conscience, believing I had done what mothers do. And now I sit here, in this place with its scheduled activities and polite staff, and I wonder if Daniel will ever understand, if he will ever ask the right questions, if he will ever look closely enough to see the truth beneath the surface of his own story. Because the story he tells himself is simple. He is a good son. He took care of his aging mother. He made the responsible choice. But the story I know is different. It is quieter, heavier. It is the story of a woman who erased herself so her son could feel secure, who dismantled her own history, piece by piece, so he could build his future without fear. I do not expect him to repay me. I never did. But sometimes I wish he would simply remember, that he would see me not as a problem he solved, but as a person who solved problems for him, that he would understand the difference between managing someone's life and truly caring for it. Tonight, as I sit by this window that does not open all the way, I hold the ring again. I press it against my chest, and I think about what I will leave behind. Not the house, not the jewelry. Those are gone. But maybe, if I tell this story, someone will understand. Someone will see their own mother differently. Someone will ask the right questions before it is too late. My name is Marian. I am 72, and this is the story of how I saved everything my son remembers and lost everything I was. But that night, something happened that I did not expect. Something that made me question whether silence was ever really kindness at all. The house in Charleston was not just walls and windows. It was the architecture of my entire life. Every room held a memory I could touch. The kitchen where I taught Daniel to crack eggs without getting shell in the bowl. The living room where we opened Christmas presents on mornings that smelled like cinnamon and pine. The upstairs hallway where I measured his height against the doorframe every birthday, watching the pencil marks climb higher year after year. My husband, Thomas, bought that house the year we married, 1973. He carried me over the threshold even though I laughed and told him it was old-fashioned. He kissed my forehead and said some traditions matter. We were young. We believed in permanence. We planted azaleas in the front yard and talked about the children we would raise there, the grandchildren who would visit, the holiday dinners that would fill every chair at the table. Daniel was born 2 years later. Spring baby, easy labor. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and my husband's dark eyes. Thomas held him like he was made of glass. I watched my strong, steady husband become gentle in ways I had never seen. He built a crib by hand, sanded it smooth so there would be no splinters, painted it white. When Daniel cried in the night, Thomas would walk him through the house, humming old hymns his own father had sung to him. We were happy, not perfect, but happy. The kind of happiness that does not announce itself, that lives in small moments. Sunday mornings reading the paper together. Thursday nights playing cards on the porch. The way Thomas would kiss the top of my head when he walked past me in the kitchen. The way I would leave notes in his lunch. The way we built a life one ordinary day at a time. Daniel grew. He was a serious child, thoughtful. He did his homework without being asked. He kept his room neat. He did not cause trouble. Other mothers complained about tantrums and defiance. I stayed quiet, grateful. I thought I had been blessed with an easy son. Now I wonder if he was simply learning early how to keep problems to himself, how to manage everything quietly, how to solve issues without asking for help. When Daniel was 12, Thomas started coughing. We thought it was allergies, then bronchitis, then something worse. By the time the doctors gave us the diagnosis, the cancer had already spread. Stage 4, inoperable. 6 months if we were lucky. We were not lucky. Thomas died 4 months later, in our bedroom, holding my hand. He made me promise to take care of Daniel, to keep the house, to make sure our son always had a place to come home to. I promised. I meant it. After the funeral, people brought casseroles and condolences. They said I was strong. They said Daniel was handling it well. They said time would heal. They were wrong about the last part. Time does not heal. It just teaches you to carry the weight differently, to smile when you answer the door, to say you are fine when someone asks, to pretend the empty side of the bed is normal. I went back to work at the boutique. I sold jewelry to women celebrating anniversaries and engagements. I wrapped boxes with ribbon and tissue paper. I smiled and congratulated them. I went home to an empty house and made dinner for one. Daniel was in high school by then, busy with friends and football practice. I did not want to burden him with my grief, so I kept it private. I cried in the shower where he could not hear me. I held Thomas's pillow at night and let myself break apart Only when Daniel was asleep. The house became my responsibility. The mortgage, the repairs, the property taxes, I managed it all. I did not complain. Thomas had asked me to keep it, so I did. I worked extra hours, I skipped vacations, I wore the same clothes for years. I learned to fix leaking faucets and unclog drains. I became both mother and father, both soft and strong, both comfort and discipline. Daniel graduated high school, then college. He got a good job in finance. He rented an apartment downtown, modern building, gym in the lobby. He seemed proud of his independence. I was proud too. I had raised a man who could take care of himself, who did not need his mother to solve his problems, who had built a life on his own. He visited less after he moved out. At first every Sunday, then every other week, then once a month, then holidays. I told myself it was natural, that young men need space, that I should be glad he was thriving. But the house felt larger without him, the silence louder. I started talking to myself just to hear a voice. The boutique closed when the owner retired. I was 63, too old to find new work easily, too young to retire comfortably. I took a part-time job at the library. It paid less, much less. I stretched every dollar. I bought generic brands. I turned off lights in empty rooms. I stopped buying anything that was not essential. I told Daniel everything was fine, that I was managing, that he should not worry. But I was worried. The mortgage payments were difficult. The property taxes kept rising. The house needed repairs I could not afford. A leak in the roof, cracks in the foundation. The furnace made strange noises. I ignored them all. I prayed they would wait, that I could hold on a little longer, that something would change. Then the letter came. Certified mail, official letterhead, the bank. They were calling in the loan. Something about refinancing requirements, new regulations. I did not understand all the language, but I understood the bottom line. I had 90 days to pay $38,000 or they would begin foreclosure proceedings. $38,000. I had $900 in my savings account. I had no one to ask for help. My parents were gone. Thomas's family had scattered after he died. I had friends, but not the kind you ask for that much money. And I could not tell Daniel. He was building his career, saving for his future. I would not ask him to rescue me. I would not let him see me as a burden. So I sat at the kitchen table with that letter in my hands, and I looked around at the house Thomas had carried me into, the house where I had raised our son, the house I had promised to keep, and I knew what I had to do. I went upstairs to the bedroom. I opened the closet. I took down the jewelry box, blue velvet, tarnished gold clasp. Inside were all the pieces Thomas had given me, each one a memory, each one a moment of love made tangible. I held the pearl necklace up to the light and remembered our 10th anniversary, the restaurant by the water, the way he had surprised me with the box at dessert, the way I had cried and told him it was too much, the way he had fastened it around my neck and said nothing was too much for me. I closed the box, I put it in my purse, and I did not let myself think too much about what I was about to do, because if I thought about it, I might not be able to go through with it, and I had no other choice. But before I left the house that morning, I slipped one ring off my finger, the smallest one, the simplest one, the gold band Thomas gave me before we were even engaged. A promise ring, no diamond, no engraving, just plain gold. I put it inside my prayer book, between the pages of Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. I closed the book. I left it on my nightstand, and I walked out the door with everything else Thomas had ever given me, ready to trade memory for survival. That drive to the pawn shop felt like a funeral procession, just me and the weight of what I was about to lose. The pawn shop was on the east side of town, past the highway exit where the streetlights flicker and the pavement cracks into weeds. I had never been to that part of Charleston before. It was not somewhere people like me went, but that morning, I was not people like me. I was a woman with a jewelry box and no other options. The building was small, brick painted gray, bars on the windows, a neon sign that buzzed in the daylight. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before I could make myself open the door. I kept thinking about Thomas, about the night he proposed under the oak tree, about the way he had been so nervous his hands shook when he opened the ring box, about the way I had said yes before he even finished asking. Inside, the shop smelled like dust and desperation. Glass cases lined the walls, watches, cameras, musical instruments, things people had loved once and then been forced to surrender. A man stood behind the counter, older than me, thin, reading glasses on a chain around his neck. He looked up when I entered, but did not smile. This was not a place for smiling. I approached the counter. I set the jewelry box down. My hands were shaking. I opened the lid. The pearls, the gold earrings, the sapphire ring, the diamond bracelet Thomas bought me when Daniel was born, the ruby pendant from our 20th anniversary. 30 years of marriage laid out on fake velvet under fluorescent lights. The man put on his glasses. He picked up each piece, examined them with a small magnifying glass. He did not speak. He did not ask where they came from or why I was selling them. He simply weighed them, tested them, made notes on a pad of paper. When he finished, he looked at me over the top of his glasses. $12,000, he said. His voice was flat, transactional, as if he was telling me the price of milk. I felt my chest tighten. 12,000. These pieces were worth at least 3 times that, maybe more. The sapphire alone had been appraised at $8,000 when Thomas insured it. That is not enough, I said quietly. I need more than that. He shrugged. That is what I can offer. You are welcome to try somewhere else. But there was nowhere else. No time to shop around. No time to negotiate. The bank had given me 90 days, and I had already wasted 2 weeks trying to think of another solution. I needed the money now. I needed to make the first payment to show good faith, to buy myself time to figure out the rest. I will take it, I said. He counted out the cash, $100 bills, stacked them on the counter, pushed them toward me. I put them in my purse. He gave me a receipt, handwritten, barely legible. I folded it and tucked it away, knowing I would never look at it again, knowing I would never come back to reclaim these things. They were gone, sold, erased from my life as if they had never existed. I walked out of that shop feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter because the weight of the jewelry box was gone. Heavier because I knew what I had just done. I had traded my history for time. I had sold the evidence of my husband's love to save the building that had housed it. The drive home was a blur. I do not remember the streets I took or the lights I stopped at. I only remember pulling into the driveway and sitting there with the engine off, staring at the house, the white columns, the magnolia trees, the windows that had watched me become a wife, a mother, a widow. I had kept it, for now. But at what cost? I went inside. I made tea. I sat at the kitchen table and counted the money again. $12,000. Not enough to pay the bank everything they wanted, but enough to make a significant payment, enough to show I was serious, enough to buy myself more time. The next day, I went to the bank. I spoke to a loan officer, a young man with a kind face and a firm handshake. I gave him the money. I explained my situation. He listened. He typed things into his computer. He made phone calls. After an hour, he told me they would extend the deadline. 6 more months. But I would need to pay the remaining amount in full, or they would proceed with foreclosure. 6 months. I thanked him. I walked out of the bank feeling like I had won a battle but not the war. I still needed $26,000. I still had no idea where it would come from. But I had bought time, and time was all I had left to trade. I did not tell Daniel any of this. When he called that week, I told him everything was fine. The house was fine. I was fine. Work at the library was fine. Everything was fine. He believed me because I had trained him to believe me. I had spent his entire life making sure he never saw the cracks, never knew about the struggles, never had to carry the weight of my worries. Over the next 6 months, I worked every shift I could get. I took on extra hours at the library. I sold furniture I did not need, a dining room set, a guest bedroom suite, an antique desk that had been my mother's. I sold them online to strangers who came to my house, loaded them into trucks, and drove away with pieces of my past. I stopped eating out. I stopped buying new clothes. I canceled my cable. I let my hair grow long because I could not afford haircuts. I became invisible, a woman whose life was shrinking into the singular purpose of keeping a house And slowly, painfully, I gathered the money, 15,000, 18,000, 22,000. I opened the drawer where I kept the cash and counted it every night before bed. A ritual, a prayer, a promise that I was almost there. By the time the 6 months were up, I had $25,000. Still not enough. I needed 1,000 more. Just 1,000. I lay awake at night trying to think of what else I could sell, what else I owned that had any value. But there was nothing left. I had already stripped my life down to its bones. Then I remembered the silver tea set, my grandmother's, hidden in the back of the china cabinet. I had not touched it in years. I did not even like tea from silver. It tasted metallic, but it was valuable, sterling, antique, worth something to someone. I took it to an antique dealer, a woman with white hair and gentle eyes. She examined the set carefully. She told me it was beautiful, that it was rare, that it had been made in 1897. She offered me $1,500. I took it without hesitation. The next day, I went back to the bank. I paid them in full, $38,000. The loan officer smiled. He congratulated me. He said I had done an incredible thing. He did not know that I had dismantled my entire life to do it, that I had sold every piece of beauty I owned, that I had traded memories for mortgage payments. I walked out of that bank with a receipt that said the house was mine, free and clear, no more loan, no more threat. I had won. I had kept my promise to Thomas. I had saved our home. But when I got back to the house and walked through the empty rooms, I realized something. The house was saved, but it was hollow now. All the things that had made it beautiful were gone. The jewelry Thomas had given me, the furniture my mother had passed down, the silver my grandmother had cherished. I had kept the structure and lost the soul. I stood in the living room that afternoon and felt a strange kind of grief, not for the things themselves, but for what they represented, for the way I had erased evidence of love in order to preserve a building, for the way I had made myself smaller and smaller until I almost disappeared. That night, I went upstairs. I opened my prayer book. I took out the small gold ring, the one piece I had kept. I slipped it on my finger. It still fit, and I whispered a prayer, not to God, but to Thomas. I told him I had kept the house. I told him I had done what he asked. But I also told him I was tired, that I did not know how much longer I could carry this alone. Daniel never knew any of it. He visited the next month. He walked through the house and noticed nothing different. He did not see the empty spaces where furniture had been. He did not ask about the jewelry I no longer wore. He did not notice that I looked thinner, older, worn down. He talked about his job, his apartment, his plans. I listened. I smiled. I asked the right questions. I played my role. And when he left, I closed the door behind him and wondered if I had done the right thing, if protecting him from my struggle had been love or something else, something quieter, something sadder, something that looked like love but felt like loneliness. But years passed. The house stood. Daniel thrived. And I told myself that sacrifice was supposed to hurt, that if it did not cost you something, it was not really sacrifice at all. What I did not know then was that one day, Daniel would look at this same house and see it differently, that he would see it as a burden I could no longer carry, that he would make a decision for me without asking what I wanted, that he would confuse management with care, and that when he did, I would finally understand the price of silence. The years after I paid off the house were quiet ones, the kind of quiet that settles into your bones and becomes part of you. I kept working at the library, shelving books, helping patrons find what they needed, smiling at children during story hour. It was peaceful work, the kind that does not demand much but gives you a reason to leave the house each day. Daniel was building his life. He got promoted, then promoted again. He moved to a bigger apartment. He started dating a woman named Claire. She was beautiful, polished. She worked in marketing. She wore high heels and carried expensive handbags. When Daniel brought her to meet me, she looked around the house with polite interest. She complimented the architecture. She asked about the history, but I could see in her eyes that she was measuring it, calculating its value, seeing it as an asset rather than a home. They got engaged a year later. Daniel brought her to the house to tell me. They sat on the sofa, holding hands, glowing with that particular brightness that comes from believing your future is perfect. I hugged them both. I told them I was happy. I was. But I also felt something else. A small flutter of worry. A sense that I was losing something I could not name. The wedding was planned for the following spring. Claire wanted a big event. 200 guests, live band, formal dinner. She showed me pictures from bridal magazines. Everything looked expensive. Everything looked like it belonged in a different world than mine. Daniel told me not to worry about the cost. He said he had it covered. He said he wanted to give Claire the wedding she deserved. I offered to help, to contribute something. But Daniel waved me off. He said I had already done enough, that I should just enjoy the day, that he wanted me to relax and not worry about anything. I accepted his words because I did not want to seem difficult. I did not want to intrude. I had raised him to be independent, to solve his own problems, and now I was watching him do exactly that. But as the wedding approached, I realized something. I was not part of the planning. Claire called me once to ask if I had any food allergies. That was the only time she asked for my input. I was not invited to dress fittings. I was not included in vendor meetings. I was not asked to help with centerpieces or invitations or seating charts. I was simply informed, told the date, told the time, told what to wear. At first I told myself it was normal, that modern weddings are different, that the bride's family usually handles the details, that I should not take it personally. But as the months passed, I felt more and more like a guest at my own son's wedding, like someone obligated to attend, but not truly wanted. 2 months before the wedding, Daniel came to the house, alone. He sat at the kitchen table. I made coffee. He looked nervous. He cleared his throat several times before speaking. Finally, he said he needed to talk to me about something. "Mom," he said, "Claire and I have been thinking about the future, about long-term planning." I nodded, encouraging him to continue. "This house," he said, "it is a lot for you to manage. The upkeep, the yard, the stairs. You are not getting any younger." I felt my chest tighten. I knew where this was going. "We think it might be time to consider downsizing," he said, "maybe selling, moving into something smaller, easier, more manageable." I stared at him. This house, the house I had sold my jewelry to save, the house I had emptied of everything beautiful to keep, the house I had promised Thomas I would never lose. He wanted me to sell it. "I am managing fine," I said quietly. "I know," he said. "But for how long? What happens when you cannot climb the stairs anymore? What happens if you fall and no one is here to help you? Claire and I just want you to be safe, to be comfortable." "I am comfortable here," I said. He sighed. "Mom, be reasonable. This house is too big for one person. And honestly, the market is good right now. You could sell it for a significant amount, invest the money, maybe move into a nice retirement community, somewhere with activities, people your own age, a retirement community." He was talking about me like I was already helpless, like I was already incapable. I was only 68. I was healthy. I could still work, still drive, still live independently. But in his eyes, I was already an old woman who needed to be managed. "I am not ready to leave this house," I said firmly. Daniel looked frustrated. "Mom, I am trying to help you. I am trying to think ahead, to plan for what is best." "What is best for whom?" I asked. The question came out sharper than I intended. He blinked, surprised. "For you," he said. Obviously, but I could see something else in his face, something he did not say. He and Claire needed money. The wedding was expensive. Their future plans were expensive. And this house was valuable. If I sold it, there would be money. Money they could potentially benefit from someday. Money that was sitting in bricks and mortar while they were building their lives. I did not argue further. I simply said I would think about it. He left, looking unsatisfied, but I knew I would not change my mind. This house was not just property to me, it was proof that I had kept my promise, proof that I had survived, proof that all the sacrifice had meant something. The wedding arrived. It was held at a country club, white tents, string lights, roses everywhere. I wore a pale blue dress I had bought on sale. I stood in the receiving line and shook hands with people I did not know, people who worked with Daniel, friends of Claire's family. I smiled. I said congratulations. I posed for photographs. But I noticed something. In every photograph, I was positioned at the edge, not next to Daniel, not in the center of the family grouping, always to the side, as if I was optional, as if I could be cropped out later without affecting the composition. During the reception, I sat at a table with distant relatives I barely knew. Daniel and Claire sat at the head table with the wedding party. I watched my son laugh and dance and toast his new wife. I watched him live his joy, and I felt invisible, like a shadow in my own child's life. Claire's mother gave a speech. She talked about watching Claire grow up, about all the dreams they had shared, about how proud she was. Then Daniel's best man gave a speech. He told funny stories. He talked about brotherhood and loyalty. No one asked me to speak. No one acknowledged me beyond a brief mention. Daniel stood and thanked everyone for coming. He thanked Claire's parents for their support. He thanked his friends. And then, almost as an afterthought, he said, "And of course, thank you to my mom for being here, as if my presence was the only contribution I had made to his life, as if the years of raising him alone, of working myself thin to give him stability, of selling my jewelry to keep a roof over his head, could be summarized in 3 words, for being here." I smiled. I clapped. I did not cry. Not then. I saved that for later, for the drive home, for the moment when I walked back into the empty house and realized that I had given everything to raise a son who saw me as an obligation. That night, I sat on the porch. The same porch where Thomas and I used to drink coffee on Sunday mornings. The same porch where I had watched Daniel learn to ride a bike. I took out the small gold ring from my pocket. I had carried it with me to the wedding, hidden in my purse, a reminder of who I used to be, of what I had been willing to sacrifice, and I wondered if I had made a mistake, if I had loved Daniel so completely, so selflessly, that I had taught him I did not need anything in return, that I had trained him to see my sacrifices as invisible, normal, expected, because that is what they had become, invisible. He did not know about the jewelry I sold. He did not know about the furniture I auctioned. He did not know about the months I ate pasta and canned soup so I could pay the mortgage. He did not know because I had never told him. I had protected him from the truth of what it cost to keep him safe. And now, as I sat alone in the house I had fought so hard to keep, I realized something. Silence had not protected him. It had only made me disappear. I had become so good at being invisible that even my own son could not see me anymore. But the story was not over yet. Because 6 months after the wedding, Daniel came back to the house with another proposal, one that would change everything, one that would finally force me to speak the truth I had been hiding for so long. And this time, I would not stay silent. 6 months after the wedding, Daniel called. He said he wanted to stop by. He said it was important. I made lemonade. I set out cookies on the good china. I waited on the porch, watching the street for his car. When he arrived, Claire was with him. She smiled politely. She complimented the garden. She had never been interested in the garden before. I knew something was wrong. We sat in the living room. The afternoon light came through the windows in long, golden strips. Daniel cleared his throat. Claire folded her hands in her lap. They looked like they had rehearsed this. "Mom," Daniel began, "we have been talking about your future, about what is best for you." I felt my stomach drop. This was not a conversation. This was an announcement. "You are 70 years old now," he continued. "You are still working part-time, still maintaining this big house. We are worried about you. About what happens if something goes wrong, if you fall, if you get sick, if you need help and no one is here." "I am fine," I said. "You are fine now," Claire interjected. Her voice was gentle but firm, like she was talking to a child. "But what about next year? What about 5 years from now? We want to make sure you are taken care of." Daniel leaned forward. "We have been looking at facilities," he said. "Nice places, communities designed for seniors. They have activities, medical staff on site, meal plans, social events. You would not have to worry about anything. Facilities," he meant nursing homes, assisted living, places where old people go to wait. "I do not need a facility," I said. My voice was steady, but my hands were shaking. "I am managing perfectly well. Mom, please." Daniel's voice had that edge of impatience. the same tone he used when he thought I was being unreasonable. We are not saying you are incapable. We are saying it is time to be practical. This house is too much. You cannot keep it up forever. I have kept it up for 50 years, I said. Exactly, Claire said. 50 years. Do you not think you have earned a rest? A chance to let someone else handle the maintenance and the worry? But I did not want someone else to handle it. This house was not a burden to me. It was my history, my proof, the place where I had loved and lost and survived. I had sold everything I owned to keep it, and now they wanted me to just walk away. We found a place we think you would really like, Daniel said. He pulled out a brochure, glossy paper, smiling elderly people playing cards, a manicured lawn, Meadowbrook Senior Living. It is only 20 minutes away. We could visit regularly. They have a wonderful staff, beautiful rooms. You would have your own space, but also community. I took the brochure. I looked at the pictures, clean hallways, beige walls, generic furniture, rooms that looked like hotel rooms. No history, no soul, just a place to exist until you stop existing. I do not want this, I said quietly. Daniel sighed. Mom, I know change is hard, but this is not about what you want right now. This is about what is best for your health and safety. Claire and I have talked to our financial advisor. We have looked at the numbers. We can afford to place you somewhere really nice, somewhere you will be comfortable. Place me. Like I was a piece of furniture, like I was something to be arranged and managed. What about the house? I asked. We would sell it, Daniel said matter-of-factly. The market is strong. It would sell quickly. The money would go toward your care, toward making sure you are taken care of for the rest of your life. My care. He meant my confinement, my removal, my erasure from the landscape of his life. I looked at my son, this man I had raised, this boy I had protected from every hardship, and I realized he had no idea what he was asking me to give up, because he had no idea what I had already given up to get here. Daniel, I said slowly, do you remember when you were in college? When you came home for Thanksgiving and the house was still here? Still warm? Still yours? Of course, he said. Do you remember wondering how a widow on a library salary kept a house like this? He looked uncomfortable. I assumed you managed, he said. I did manage, I said, but not the way you think. I stood up. I went to the mantel. I took down a small wooden box. Inside was the receipt from the pawn shop, yellowed, folded. I had kept it all these years even though I told myself I would throw it away. I handed it to Daniel. What is this? He asked. Read it, I said. He unfolded the paper. His eyes scanned the words. Pawn, gold, pearls, sapphire, $12,000. He looked up at me, confused. I sold my jewelry, I said. Every piece your father ever gave me. I sold it to save this house. The bank was going to foreclose. You were 28. You were just starting your career. I did not want you to know. I did not want you to carry that burden. So I carried it myself. Daniel stared at the receipt. Mom, he said quietly, I did not know. I know you did not know, I said. That was the point. I wanted you to believe the world was stable, that homes do not disappear, that mothers do not break themselves to hold things together. I wanted you to feel safe. So I made myself invisible. Claire shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Holloway, she said, that was very noble, but that was also decades ago. Things are different now. You are different now. I am not different, I said. I am exactly the same. I am still the woman who will do whatever it takes to keep what matters. And this house matters. Not because it is valuable, but because it is proof. Proof that I kept my promise to your father, Daniel. Proof that I survived. Proof that all the sacrifice meant something. Daniel set the receipt down. Mom, he said gently, I understand this house has sentimental value, but you cannot live in the past. You have to think about your future, about what is practical. Practical, I repeated. You want to know what is practical? Practical is a mother who sells her wedding jewelry so her son can sleep without nightmares. Practical is working extra shifts at 70 years old so you can keep a roof over your head. Practical is sacrificing everything and asking for nothing in return. I have been practical my entire life, Daniel. And now you want to repay me by putting me in a facility and selling the one thing I fought to keep. His face flushed. "I am not trying to punish you," he said. "I am trying to help you." "Then help me by letting me stay," I said. "Help me by understanding that this is my home, that I am not ready to leave it, that I do not need to be managed like a problem that needs solving." "But you are a problem," Claire said. The words came out before she could stop them. She covered her mouth, horrified. "I mean, that came out wrong. I just mean that we worry, that we want to make sure you are safe." I looked at her. This young woman who had married my son and now thought she had the right to decide my future. This woman who had never lost anything, who had never had to choose between memory and survival. "I am safe," I said coldly. "I am safe in the home I have lived in for 52 years. I am safe in the place where I raised my son and buried my husband and learned how to survive alone. What I am not safe from is being erased. And that is exactly what you are trying to do." Daniel stood up. "Mom," he said. His voice was harder now, frustrated. "We are trying to do the right thing. We are trying to be responsible. If you cannot see that, then I do not know what else to say." "Then say nothing," I said. "And leave my house." They left. The door closed behind them. I stood in the empty living room and felt the silence settle around me like a blanket, heavy, suffocating. I had finally spoken the truth. I had finally told my son what I had sacrificed, and he had heard it and decided it did not matter, that the past was irrelevant, that only his version of the future counted. I went upstairs. I took out the gold ring. I held it in my palm and felt the weight of it, so small, so light. And yet, it held everything, every promise, every sacrifice, every moment of love that had been invisible to everyone but me. That night, I did not sleep. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling and wondered if I had been wrong, if I should have told Daniel years ago, if I should have let him see the struggle, if I should have asked for help instead of always being the one who gave it. But it was too late now. The truth was out, and instead of bringing us closer, it had driven us further apart. Because Daniel did not want a mother with a history. He wanted a mother who was easy, manageable, someone who fit neatly into his plans without complicating them. And I was not that mother. I never had been. I had just been very good at pretending. But the pretending was over now, and what came next would test whether love could survive honesty, whether a son could see his mother as a person instead of a problem, whether sacrifice had any value if the person you sacrificed for never understood the cost. Daniel did not call for 3 weeks. No visits, no texts, just silence. The kind of silence that feels like punishment. I told myself it was fine, that he needed time to process, that eventually he would come around. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. Something had broken that could not be easily repaired. I continued my routine. The library, the garden, the empty house. But everything felt different now, heavier. The rooms that had once felt full of memory now felt full of ghosts. I would walk past Daniel's old bedroom and remember tucking him in at night, reading him stories, checking for monsters under the bed. And I would wonder when I had become the monster, the obstacle, the problem that needed solving. Claire called first. Her voice was careful, measured. She said she wanted to apologize for how things had ended. She said they had not meant to upset me. She said they only wanted what was best. But underneath the apology, I heard something else. Determination. She had not given up. She was simply regrouping, planning a different approach. A week later, Daniel showed up. Alone this time. He looked tired, older somehow. He sat at the kitchen table, and I made coffee, and we stared at each other across 30 years of unspoken things. "Mom," he said finally, "I have been thinking about what you said, about the jewelry, about everything you did to keep this house, and I want you to know I am grateful. I really am." "But," I said, because I could hear it coming. "But," he continued, "that does not change the fact that you are 70 years old, that this house is too big, that you need help, whether you want to admit it or not." "I do not need help," I said. "Everyone needs help eventually," he said. "There is no shame in that. There is shame in being forced," I said quietly. "There is shame in having your life decided for you without your consent." He rubbed his face. "Mom, what do you want me to do? Sit back and wait until you fall down the stairs? Until you forget to turn off the stove? Until something happens and I am not there to help you? I want you to trust me, I said. To believe that I know my own limitations. To let me live my life the way I choose, even if that choice puts you in danger? I am not in danger, I said. I am in my home. There is a difference. He sighed. We are not going to agree on this, are we? No, I said. We are not. He stood up. Fine. Stay in the house. Keep pretending everything is fine. But when something happens, and it will happen, do not be surprised when I make the decisions that need to be made. It sounded like a threat. Soft, polite, but a threat nonetheless. I watched him leave and felt a chill run through me. My son was not asking anymore. He was waiting. Waiting for me to stumble, waiting for an excuse to take control. Months passed. Fall turned to winter. The house grew colder. The furnace that had been making strange noises finally gave out. I called a repairman. He said it was beyond fixing, that I needed a new system. $8,000. I did not have $8,000. My savings had been depleted years ago when I paid off the house. I lived on my small pension from the library. There was nothing left for emergencies. I bought space heaters. I wore layers of clothing. I told myself it was temporary, that I would figure something out, but the cold seeped into everything, into the walls, into my bones, into my resolve. One morning in January, I woke up dizzy. The room spun when I tried to stand. I made it to the bathroom, but my legs felt weak. I sat on the edge of the tub and waited for the feeling to pass. It did, eventually, but I was shaken, scared in a way I had not been before. I called my doctor. He squeezed me in that afternoon. After the examination, he sat across from me with a concerned expression. "Mrs. Holloway," he said, "your blood pressure is dangerously high. Your heart rate is irregular. When was the last time you had a full checkup?" I could not remember. Years, maybe. I had stopped going to doctors unless something was seriously wrong. It cost too much. My insurance only covered so much. I told him I had been feeling fine. "You are not fine," he said. "You need medication. You need regular monitoring. And you need to take better care of yourself. Are you eating properly? Staying warm? Getting enough rest?" I lied. I told him yes. I told him I was managing. He did not believe me. He wrote prescriptions. He scheduled follow-up appointments. He gave me a pamphlet about managing stress, as if stress was something I could simply choose to stop feeling. I picked up the medications. They were expensive. I had to choose between them and groceries. I chose the medications. I would eat less. It was fine. I had lived on less before, but my body was betraying me. The dizziness came more frequently. My hands trembled when I shelved books at the library. I dropped things, forgot things. My supervisor pulled me aside and asked if I was feeling all right. I said I was just tired. She suggested I take some time off. I said I would think about it, but I could not afford to take time off. I needed the small paycheck. It was all I had. One afternoon in February, I was climbing the stairs at home when my vision blurred. My foot missed the step. I grabbed for the railing, but my hand slipped. I fell backwards. 3 steps. 4. I landed hard on the floor at the bottom. Pain shot through my hip and shoulder. I lay there for a moment, stunned, trying to breathe, trying to understand what had just happened. I managed to pull myself up. Nothing felt broken, just bruised, shaken. I made it to the sofa and sat there for an hour, staring at nothing. My phone was upstairs. I had not brought it down with me. If I had been seriously hurt, I would have been alone. No one would have known. No one would have found me for days. The thought terrified me. But I did not call Daniel. I could not, because if I told him I had fallen, he would use it as proof, as justification for everything he had been saying. He would swoop in and take control, and I would lose the one thing I had left, my autonomy, my right to choose how I lived. So I said nothing. I iced the bruises. I took painkillers. I moved more carefully, and I pretended it had not happened. But Daniel had been watching, more closely than I realized. He had been talking to my doctor, to my supervisor at the library, gathering information, building a case. I did not know this yet. I did not know that decisions were being made without me, that papers were being prepared, that my life was being dismantled piece by piece while I sat alone in my cold house, believing I still had control. 2 weeks after I fell, Daniel showed up with Claire and another man, older, well-dressed. He introduced himself as Mr. Peterson, an elder care specialist. Daniel said they just wanted to talk, to discuss options, to help me see reason. We sat in the living room. Mr. Peterson asked questions. How was I managing daily tasks? Was I taking my medications? Did I have a support system? I answered carefully, aware that every word was being used against me, that this was not a conversation. It was an evaluation. At the end, Mr. Peterson smiled kindly. Mrs. Holloway, he said, you have raised a wonderful son. He cares deeply about your well-being. And from what I am hearing, I think it might be time to consider a transition, a place where you can have support, where you do not have to worry about maintaining a house or managing on your own. I have been managing on my own for 30 years, I said. Yes, he said gently, and you have done an admirable job. But age catches up with all of us. There is no shame in accepting help. Daniel leaned forward. Mom, he said, I have already put a deposit down on a room at Meadowbrook. You remember, the place we showed you. They have an opening next month. I think we should take it. I stared at him. You put down a deposit, without asking me, because I knew you would say no, he said, because you are too stubborn to see what is obvious to everyone else. You cannot stay here. It is not safe. This is my house, I said. My voice was shaking now. You do not get to decide when I leave it. Mom, Claire said softly, we are not the enemy here. We are trying to help you. But they were not trying to help me. They were trying to remove me, to clear the obstacle, to free themselves from the burden of having to worry about me. And underneath all their concern, I could see the truth. They wanted the house, not because they needed it, but because it represented money. Money that was tied up in bricks and mortar while I stubbornly refused to die or disappear. I asked them to leave. They did. But as they walked out, Daniel turned back. This is happening, Mom, he said. Whether you like it or not, I have legal options. I have spoken to a lawyer. If I need to pursue guardianship to protect you from yourself, I will. Guardianship. The word hung in the air like a noose. He was threatening to take away my rights, to declare me incompetent, to make me a child again. And the worst part was, he believed he was doing it out of love. That night, I sat on the porch with the gold ring in my hand. I thought about Thomas, about the promises we made, about the life we built, and I wondered if he would forgive me for what I was about to do. Because I realized something. I could fight Daniel. I could resist. I could hold on until the very end. But the cost would be everything. My dignity, my peace, my final years spent in battle with the son I had given everything to protect. Or I could surrender. I could let go. I could walk into that facility with my head high and my silence intact. I could let Daniel believe he had won, that he had done the right thing, that he had saved me, and maybe, in letting go, I could finally rest. But not yet. Not without one last truth, one last moment of clarity, one last chance for my son to see what he was really doing, because the story was not over, and the ending had not yet been written. I had 2 weeks before Daniel planned to move me to Meadowbrook, 2 weeks to prepare, to pack, to say goodbye to 52 years of memory pressed into walls and floors and window panes. He called every day, asking if I needed help, offering to send movers. His voice was cheerful, efficient, as if we were planning a vacation instead of an exile. I told him I could manage, that I would pack my own things, that I needed time alone to sort through everything. He agreed. Relieved, I think, that I was not fighting anymore, that I had accepted the inevitable, but I had not accepted anything. I was simply waiting, for the right moment, for the right words, for one last chance to make him see. I spent those 2 weeks going through the house, room by room, drawer by drawer. A lifetime of accumulation. Photos of Daniel as a baby, his elementary school artwork, report cards, birthday cards, letters he had written me from college. I love you, Mom. Thank you for everything. I could not do this without you. I sat on the floor of his old bedroom and read those letters and wondered when gratitude had turned to management, when love had become logistics, when I had stopped being a mother and started being a problem. I packed slowly, deliberately, choosing what little I could take with me. They had told me the room at Meadowbrook was small, that I could only bring essentials, personal items, photos, clothing. Everything else would have to be sold or donated or thrown away. 52 years reduced to 3 boxes and a suitcase. The furniture would be sold. The dishes, the linens, the books, the paintings on the walls, the curtains my mother had sewn by hand, the quilt my grandmother had stitched, all of it, gone, erased, as if our lives had never happened in these rooms. I walked through the house at night, touching walls, remembering, the kitchen where Thomas had proposed to me a second time after we were already married, the living room where we had danced on our anniversary, the bedroom where he had died holding my hand, the porch where I had watched Daniel learn to ride a bike, his small voice calling, "Mom, are you watching? Are you watching?" I had been watching. I had always been watching. But no one had been watching me. No one had seen the woman behind the mother, the person behind the sacrifices, the heart that had been slowly breaking under the weight of invisibility. 3 days before the move, I called Daniel. I asked him to come to the house, alone. No Claire, no specialists, just him and me. He hesitated, then agreed. He arrived in the late afternoon. The light was golden, soft, the kind of light that makes everything look like a memory, even while it is still happening. We sat on the porch. I poured lemonade. We drank in silence for a while. Then I spoke. "Daniel," I said, "before I leave this house, I need you to understand something." He looked at me, wary, waiting. "I need you to understand what this house cost me, not in dollars, but in pieces of myself." "Mom," he said, "we have been through this." "No," I said, "we have not. You heard me tell you about the jewelry, but you did not really hear it. You did not let it change anything. So I am going to tell you again. And this time, I need you to listen." He shifted uncomfortably, but he stayed. "When your father died," I said, "I promised him I would keep this house, that I would make sure you always had a place to come home to. Do you remember that?" He nodded. "The year you turned 28, the bank sent me a letter. They were calling in the loan. I had 90 days to pay $38,000, or they would foreclose. I had $900 in savings. I had no one to ask for help, and I could not tell you because you were just starting your career. You were building your life. I would not let you carry my burden. So I took every piece of jewelry your father ever gave me, the pearls from our anniversary, the gold earrings from when you were born, the sapphire ring from his proposal, the diamond bracelet from our 20th anniversary, the ruby pendant he saved for months to buy me. I took all of it to a pawn shop on the east side of town, and I sold it for $12,000, far less than it was worth. But I had no time to negotiate, no time to find a better offer. Then I sold furniture, my mother's dining room set, my grandmother's desk, pieces I had grown up with, pieces that held memories of people I loved who were already gone. I sold them to strangers on the internet. I let them haul away my history so I could make a mortgage payment. Then I sold my grandmother's silver tea set, the one that had been passed down for 4 generations, the one I was supposed to give to you someday. I sold it for $1,500 so I could pay the final installment to the bank. And through all of this, you never knew. You came to visit and you walked through this house and you saw nothing different. You did not see the empty spaces. You did not ask about the missing furniture. You did not notice that I stopped wearing jewelry. Because I had trained you not to see my struggles. I had made sacrifice invisible. I kept one piece, this ring. I pulled it from my pocket and held it up. The small gold band caught the light. Your father gave this to me before we were even engaged. It was a promise, a beginning. And when I sold everything else, I hid this one in my prayer book because I could not let go of everything. I needed something to hold on to, some proof that I had been loved, that I had mattered. I paused. Daniel was staring at the ring. His face was pale. "I kept this house for you," I continued, "so you would always have a place to belong, so you would never feel lost or afraid or uncertain. I gave up beauty. I gave up comfort. I gave up pieces of my past so you could have a stable future. And I never asked for anything in return. I never told you the cost. I never made you carry the weight. But now you want to take this house from me. You want to sell it. You want to use the money for my care. You say it is for my own good, for my safety, for my future. But Daniel, this house is not just property. It is proof. Proof that I kept my promise to your father. Proof that I survived. Proof that all the sacrifice meant something. And when you take it away, you are not just moving me into a facility. You are erasing the last evidence that I fought for anything, that I mattered for anything beyond being your mother. My voice broke. I stopped, took a breath, steadied myself. You say you are helping me, I said. But help is not the same as love. Help is efficient. Love is patient. Help solves problems. Love sits with pain. You have helped me, Daniel. You have arranged everything. You have made plans and signed papers and prepared a room. But you have not loved me. Not in the way I needed. Not by asking what I wanted. Not by seeing me as a person instead of a problem. Daniel was crying now, quiet tears running down his face. Mom, he whispered, I did not know. I did not understand. I know, I said gently, because I did not let you see. I protected you from everything, even from the truth of who I am, even from the cost of what I gave. And maybe that was my mistake. Maybe I should have let you see me struggle, let you carry some of the weight, let you understand that mothers are human, that we break, that we sacrifice, that we disappear piece by piece and hope someone notices before we are completely gone. I am noticing now, he said. His voice was thick, shaking. I am sorry, Mom. I am so sorry. I reached across and took his hand, the hand I had held when he was born, the hand I had guided when he learned to write, the hand that was now a man's hand, strong, capable, but still my son's hand. I know you thought you were doing the right thing, I said. I know you were trying to protect me the way I always protected you. But Daniel, there is a difference between protecting someone and controlling them, between caring for someone and managing them, between making decisions with someone and making decisions for them. What do you want me to do? He asked. Tell me, please. I want you to ask me what I want, I said, not tell me what I need. I want you to listen when I say I am not ready to leave this house. I want you to believe that I know my own mind, my own heart, my own limits. I want you to trust me the way I always trusted you. But what if something happens? He said. What if you fall again? What if you get sick? What if I am not there? Then I will call you, I said, or I will call for help, or maybe I will not. Maybe I will lie on the floor of the house I fought to keep and feel at peace, because I am still in my home, still in the place where I loved and lost and survived. And maybe that is a better ending than dying in a beige room surrounded by strangers who smile but do not know my name. He squeezed my hand. I cannot lose you, he said. You are not losing me, I said. I am still here. But if you force me into that facility, you will lose the part of me that matters most, the part that is still strong, still independent, still capable of choosing my own path. You will turn me into exactly what you fear, a helpless old woman who has given up. We sat together as the sun set. The sky turned orange and pink and purple. The magnolia trees cast long shadows across the lawn. The porch creaked beneath us the way it had creaked for 50 years. And for the first time in months, I felt like my son was really seeing me, not as a problem, not as an obligation, but as a person, his mother, the woman who had carried him and raised him and loved him enough to disappear so he could shine. Mom, he said finally, I am going to cancel the room at Meadowbrook. I felt something release in my chest, a breath I had been holding for months. Thank you, I whispered. But, he continued, and I braced myself, I want you to let me help, really help, not by taking control, but by supporting you. Let me pay for a new furnace. Let me hire someone to help with the yard work and the heavy cleaning. Let me check in more often. Not to manage you, but to be present, to be your son instead of your supervisor. I nodded. Tears were running down my face now. Yes, I said. Yes, I would like that. He pulled me into a hug, the kind of hug I had not received in years, the kind that says, I see you, I value you, I love you not for what you do, but for who you are. And in that moment, I felt something I had not felt in a very long time, hope, that maybe the story was not over, that maybe there was still time to rebuild what had been broken, that maybe honesty, even when it is painful, can be the foundation for something stronger than silence ever was. But the real test was still to come. Because words are easy, actions are harder, and I needed to see if Daniel would keep his promises, if he would truly let me live my life on my own terms, or if, when the next crisis came, he would fall back into old patterns, into control disguised as care. Daniel kept his word. The next week, a crew arrived to install a new furnace. He paid for it without asking me to contribute, without making me feel like a burden. He simply said, "The house should be warm, Mom." He hired a young man named Marcus to help with the yard, mowing, weeding, trimming the hedges. Marcus was kind, quiet. He reminded me a little of Daniel when he was younger, before life made him hard and efficient. Daniel started visiting every Sunday, not to check on me, not to inspect the house for problems, but to sit with me. We drank coffee on the porch, we talked about small things, his work, the weather, memories of Thomas. Sometimes we did not talk at all. We just sat together in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that says, "I am here, you are not alone." Claire came with him sometimes. She was different now, softer. She asked about my garden. She brought me flowers from the market. She listened when I told stories about raising Daniel. She was trying. I could see that, and I appreciated it. But I also remained cautious, because I knew that change is fragile, that good intentions can fade when they become inconvenient, that the real test would come not in easy moments, but in hard ones. Winter passed, spring arrived, the magnolias bloomed, the garden came back to life. I felt stronger. The medications were working. My blood pressure stabilized. The dizziness faded. I moved more carefully now, held the railing when I climbed stairs, asked for help when I needed it. Small adjustments, but they made a difference. One afternoon in April, I was in the garden planting tomatoes when I felt it. A sharp pain in my chest, like someone had driven a stake through my ribs. I dropped the trowel, tried to breathe, could not catch my breath. The world tilted. I sank to my knees in the dirt. My phone was in the house, too far. I tried to call out, but my voice was weak. The pain was getting worse, radiating down my arm. I knew what this was. My body was failing. Finally, completely. I lay down in the grass. The sky above me was impossibly blue. I thought about Thomas, about the life we had built, about Daniel, about whether I had done enough, been enough, loved enough. I thought about the gold ring, still hidden in my prayer book, still waiting to tell its story. And I thought, this is it. This is how it ends. Alone in the garden I planted with my own hands, in the house I fought to keep, on my terms, in my place. But then I heard Marcus. He had come to mow the lawn. He saw me, ran over, called 911, held my hand, told me to stay awake, stay with him. Help was coming. The ambulance arrived. The paramedics lifted me onto a stretcher. I remember the siren, the fluorescent lights, someone asking me questions I could not answer. And then Daniel's face, pale, terrified, holding my hand just like Marcus had. "Mom," he said, "stay with me, please." And I wanted to, not because I was afraid to die, but because I realized something. My son needed me, not the version of me that never struggled. Not the invisible woman who solved all problems silently, but the real me, the one who was fragile and human and still fighting. I woke up in a hospital room, tubes in my arms, machines beeping, Daniel asleep in a chair beside my bed. When he saw I was awake, he started crying. "You are okay," he whispered. "You are going to be okay." The doctor said I had suffered a mild heart attack, that I needed rest, monitoring, lifestyle changes, but I would recover. I had been lucky. Daniel wanted me to come stay with him while I recuperated. I almost said no, almost insisted on going home. But then I saw his face, the fear still lingering in his eyes, and I realized that letting him help was not weakness. It was love. So I stayed with Daniel and Claire for 3 weeks. She made me soup. He helped me walk to the bathroom. They treated me like I mattered, like I was not an inconvenience, but a person they cared about. And slowly, I began to trust that the change was real, that my son had finally learned to see me, not as a problem, but as his mother, fragile, human, worthy of care that came from love instead of obligation. When I returned home, everything looked different, brighter somehow. The house was still mine, but I was no longer alone in keeping it. Recovery was slow. My body reminded me daily that I was 72 years old and no longer invincible. Simple tasks exhausted me. Walking to the mailbox, climbing stairs, making tea. I had to rest between activities, had to accept that I could no longer do everything alone. Daniel hired a nurse to visit 3 times a week. Her name was Patricia. She was 60 herself, a widow like me. She checked my blood pressure, my medications, my heart rate. But mostly, she talked. She told me about her own children, her own struggles with aging, her own fight to maintain independence. We became friends, the kind of friends who understand each other without having to explain. The garden was too much for me now. Marcus took over completely. He planted what I asked for: roses, herbs, vegetables. He brought me cuttings so I could arrange them in vases throughout the house. Small reminders that beauty still existed, that life still bloomed even when the body weakened. Daniel visited twice a week now, sometimes more. He brought groceries. He fixed things that broke. He sat with me and listened to stories he had heard before, stories about his father, about his childhood, about the house and all the memories it held. He asked questions this time, real questions, not out of obligation, but out of genuine interest. One Sunday afternoon, we were sitting on the porch when he said something that surprised me. "Mom, I need to apologize." I looked at him. "For what?" "For not seeing you," he said. "For treating you like a problem instead of a person. For thinking I knew better than you what you needed. For trying to control your life instead of supporting it." "You were trying to help," I said gently. "No," he said. "I was trying to make myself feel better, to convince myself I was a good son by managing you. But being a good son is not about control. It is about presence, about listening, about honoring who you are instead of deciding who you should be." His words touched something deep inside me, a wound I had carried for years without naming it, the wound of being invisible, of being reduced to a role instead of seen as a whole person. "Thank you," I whispered, "for saying that, for understanding." "I should have understood sooner," he said, "before you had to sell your jewelry, before you had to fight me to keep your home, before you almost died in the garden." "But you understand now," I said. "That is what matters." He nodded. Then he reached into his pocket. "I have something for you." He placed a small velvet box on the table between us. I recognized it immediately. The shape, the color. My heart started racing. "Open it," he said. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside, on white satin, was the sapphire ring, the one Thomas had given me when he proposed, the one I had sold to save the house, the one I thought I would never see again. "How?" I could barely speak. "I tracked down the pawn shop," Daniel said. I described the ring. They still had a record of the transaction. It took me 3 months to find it. The man who bought it from them did not want to sell. But I kept offering more until he agreed. It cost 10 times what you got for it, but it was worth every penny. I lifted the ring from the box. The sapphire caught the afternoon light and threw blue shadows across my palm. All the memories came flooding back. Thomas on one knee under the oak tree, the way his voice shook when he asked me to marry him, the way I said yes through tears, the way he slipped this ring onto my finger and promised to love me forever. "I cannot accept this," I said. "It is too much." "Mom," Daniel said firmly, "you sold this ring to save my inheritance, to keep the house I grew up in. The least I can do is give it back to you. Let me do this, please." I looked at my son, this man who had finally learned to see me, who had finally understood the cost of invisibility, who had finally chosen love over management. "Thank you," I said, and I slipped the ring onto my finger. It still fit perfectly. We sat together in silence. The kind of silence that does not need words, the kind that says everything important has already been spoken. That evening, after Daniel left, I went upstairs to my bedroom. I took out my prayer book. I opened it to Psalm 23. The small gold band was still pressed between the pages, the promise ring Thomas gave me before everything else. I held both rings now, one in each hand, the beginning and the middle of a love story that had survived death and loss and time. I thought about everything I had sacrificed, everything I had given up, everything I had lost, and I realized something. The sacrifice had not been wasted. It had been invisible for a long time. But invisibility does not mean worthlessness. Sometimes the most important things are the ones no one sees until they are gone. My son saw me now, really saw me, and that was worth more than all the jewelry I had sold, worth more than the furniture and the silver and the years of silent struggle. Because being seen is what we all want in the end, to be recognized, to be valued, to matter, not for what we do, but for who we are. I put the gold band back in the prayer book. Some things are meant to stay hidden, to remain private, to be secrets we carry that remind us of who we were before the world asked us to become something else. But the sapphire ring stayed on my finger, a reminder that sometimes love comes back, that sometimes sacrifice is honored, that sometimes the story does not end in silence, but in recognition. I walked through the house that night, room by room, touching walls, remembering. But this time, the memories did not feel like ghosts. They felt like companions, like proof that I had lived, that I had loved, that I had fought for what mattered and won. The house was still mine. My body was weaker. My future was uncertain. But I was no longer alone. I was no longer invisible. I was a woman with a history, with a son who finally understood, with a ring on her finger that said, "You were loved, you are loved, you will always be loved." And that was enough. I am 73 now. A year has passed since the heart attack, since Daniel returned the sapphire ring, since everything changed. I still live in the house in Charleston, the house with the white columns and magnolia trees, the house I sold my jewelry to save, the house that holds 53 years of memory in its walls and floors and window panes. I will die here someday, in the bedroom where Thomas died, in the home we built together. And I am at peace with that. My body is not what it was. I move slower. I tire more easily. I take a dozen pills every morning, but I am still here, still independent, still choosing how I live each day. And that matters more than strength or youth or any illusion of permanence. Daniel visits every week, sometimes twice. He brings his family now. He and Claire have a daughter, Emma. She is 2 years old. She runs through these rooms the way Daniel once did. She plays in the garden. She asks me to read her stories. She calls me Grandma Marian. And when I hold her small hand, I feel the circle completing itself. The house that I fought to keep is now her memory too, her beginning, her foundation. Daniel is different now, softer, more present. He asks before he acts. He listens before he speaks. He has learned that love is not control, that care is not management, that honoring someone means respecting their choices even when you disagree with them. Claire has become a friend. She brings me flowers from the farmer's market. She sits with me on the porch and talks about her fears of motherhood. I tell her what I learned, that perfection is impossible, that mistakes are inevitable, that the goal is not to protect your children from all pain, but to teach them how to survive it, to carry it, to transform it into wisdom. Patricia still visits. We drink tea together. We talk about our lives, about aging and loss and the strange gift of growing old, about how the world sees us as invisible, but we see each other clearly. We laugh more than we used to. We have earned our laughter, paid for it with years of tears. Marcus tends the garden. It is more beautiful now than when I did it alone. He has planted new roses, built raised beds for vegetables, created a small sitting area where I can rest in the shade. He does not know that he saved my life that day. Or maybe he does. We do not talk about it. Some things are better left unspoken. Last month, on what would have been Thomas's 80th birthday, Daniel asked me about the jewelry, about what it meant to sell it, about whether I regretted it. I thought about his question, really thought about it, and I realized something. I did not regret it. Not the selling, not the sacrifice. What I regretted was the silence, the way I hid the cost from everyone, including myself, the way I made sacrifice invisible and then wondered why no one saw it. I would do it again, I told Daniel, but I would tell you about it. I would let you see the struggle. I would let you carry some of the weight, because that is what love is, not protecting people from hardship, but walking through hardship together. He nodded, and I saw in his eyes that he understood, that he would do things differently with Emma, that he would let her see him struggle, let her know that strength is not the absence of weakness, but the willingness to be vulnerable. Yesterday, Daniel brought Emma to visit. We sat on the porch, the three of us, watching the afternoon light move across the magnolia trees. Emma fell asleep in my lap, her small body warm and trusting. Daniel looked at us and smiled. "I am glad you are still here, Mom," he said. "In this house, living your life the way you choose. I am sorry I tried to take that from you." "You did not know," I said. "You thought you were protecting me." "But you did not need protection," he said. "You needed respect." "Yes," I said. "That is exactly right." I looked down at Emma's sleeping face, at her closed eyes and parted lips, at the innocence that has not yet learned about loss or sacrifice or the cost of love. And I hoped that when she grows up, she will live in a world where women are seen, where mothers are valued not just for what they give, but for who they are, where sacrifice is honored instead of expected, where invisibility is no longer the price of love. But even if that world does not exist, she will have this story, my story, and maybe it will help her understand that strength sometimes looks like weakness, that love sometimes looks like letting go, that the most important battles are often invisible to everyone except the person fighting them. I wear the sapphire ring every day now. It catches the light and throws blue shadows across my hands, my old, wrinkled, trembling hands that have held so much, my son as a baby, my husband as he died, the jewelry I sold, the papers I signed, the life I built and rebuilt and built again. These hands are not beautiful anymore, but they are mine. They tell my story. Every scar and spot and wrinkle is evidence that I lived, that I fought, that I loved so completely I was willing to disappear so others could shine. But I am not disappearing anymore. I am here, present, visible, wearing my ring and living in my house and holding my granddaughter. And when I die, whenever that day comes, I will leave behind more than a building. I will leave behind a story, a truth, a reminder that mothers are not just the sum of their sacrifices. We are whole people, with histories and dreams and hearts that break and heal and keep beating. My name is Marian Holloway. I am 73 years old. I sold my jewelry to save my house. I fought my son to keep my independence. I almost died in the garden I planted with my own hands. And I survived, not just physically, but as myself, whole, seen, valued. If my story helps even one person understand the cost of invisibility, it was worth telling. If it helps even one child see their mother differently, it was worth the pain. If it reminds even one woman that she is more than what she gives, it was worth every word. Because in the end, we all want the same thing: to be seen, to be known, to matter. Not for what we do, but for who we are. And if we are lucky, before we die, someone will finally look at us and understand. We'll hold our hand and say, "I see you. I always saw you. I just forgot to tell you." Daniel sees me now, and that is enough, more than enough. It is everything. The magnolia trees are blooming again. Spring has returned. The house stands strong, and I am still here, still fighting, still loving, still learning that the hardest battles are the ones we fight in silence, and the greatest victories are the ones where we finally find our voice. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sitting with me through this story. Thank you for seeing me. That is all any of us really want: to be seen, to be heard, to know that our lives, our struggles, our sacrifices mattered to someone. And now you know mine.